Well, those were the top stories we're tracking for you at this hour. We will get into that in just a bit, but before that, the debate tonight. Tonight, we debate about why is it that one by one countries in Europe are adopting or moving closer to the possibility of banning the Islamic veil or the burqa. We've seen it in France, Switzerland, Belgium, and more recently in the Netherlands, a move which coincides with a surge of anti-Muslim sentiment across Europe. And now, German Chancellor Angela Merkel has said that the full veil must be prohibited wherever that is legally possible. It's not appropriate, she says. What followed was a loud applause at the Christian Democratic Union Party conference. With this latest endorsement of the burqa ban, Germany's liberal leader has made a dramatic shift to the right. But the larger question is whether the burqa ban is all set to become a primary ideological battlefield in the clash between the West and Islam. To talk about this, let me first welcome Daniel Dylan Böhmer, editor, Foreign Desk, German daily Die Welt. And also joining me tonight is Rahul Ishwar, author and activist. He joins me from Trivandrum. But before we get into that discussion, let's take a look at what's happening in Germany, where Chancellor Angela Merkel said that she will, or she is ready to ban the burqa. She appears to be responding to the pressure from within her own party and to the blunt rise of the Alternative for Germany, which says Islam and Germany's constitution are not compatible.
After allowing thousands of Syrian refugees into the country, it appears Germany is all set to ban the burqa or the full-face veil. Chancellor Angela Merkel, clearly under fire over the refugee influx, warned that she could order a ban on the burqa.
In interpersonal communication, which plays a fundamental role here, we show our face. And that's why a full veil is inappropriate in our country. It should be banned wherever legally possible. It does not belong in our country.
When introduced, the burqa would not be allowed in schools, courtrooms and administrative buildings. It would be an offence if a woman was wearing one while driving. Nor will it be allowed during demonstrations. The caveat said that it should be legally permissible. Merkel said that the measure was intended to protect German culture since Germans showed their face during interpersonal communication. She also vowed not to let any more Syrian refugees into the country. With general elections due later next year, Merkel is trying to ally the fear and growing anger within her party, the Christian Democratic Union, over the influx of immigrants. It is also intended to counter the rise of the nationalist Alternative for Germany party, which has declared that Islam is not compatible with Germany's constitution. If the ban goes through, Germany will join a number of other European nations that have banned the burqa. Bureau Report, WION.
All right, let me first go across to Mr. Ishwar on that. Mr. Ishwar, how do you read this news? We've seen countries across Europe one by one starting to put a ban on the full-faced veil or the burqa. How do you read the developments?
Let me make a disclosure first. I'm a proud Hindu right-winger, but having said that, I'm strongly against Islamophobia. I had the great privilege to study in Europe, especially in England. I studied in London School of Economics. We have to go to this matter very deep. There is a creeping fear in the minds of white Christians in Europe that their population is going to be outnumbered. We have many times engaged with them and told them these fears are not very founded, the fertility rates are not of a big issue, and these things will be stabilized. But the deep fear inside the minds of right-wing regarding Islamization of Europe or regarding increasing Muslim population, or these things are reasons why they make up such reasons. Even in India, the Hindu right wing is on a similar path. 2 days before a BJP minister called for a mass sterilization. These fears are not very founded. These things will get even out in a long period of time. And I strongly believe we all should have some kind of a freedom to wear any dressing of our choice. Things like burqani need not be banned. But if Islamic community and Muslim brothers can come forward and do away with this full-face veil, they can have their hijab, their other partially covering dresses.
Right.
But many a time, there are inhibitions on the other side regarding a fully covered veil. So they should also understand such a sensitive issue.
Right, Mr. Iswar, we're going to be talking about a larger perspective in the context of India as well in just a few moments. But I'm joined in by Mr. Daniel Dylan Böhmer, editor, foreign desk of a German daily Die Welt. Thank you so much, Mr. Böhmer, for joining us here on the broadcast. First of all, what do you make of the recent statement coming in from Angela Merkel? You know, somebody who's been described by the New York Times as a liberal West's last defender. All right, we seem to have lost that link. We'll try and reconnect with Mr. Böhmer in just a bit. But Mr. Iswar, coming back to you, what's happening in India can be, is no different when we talk about the entry of temples of women, talk about the rights of men and women in the country. We had so many controversies just in the recent past, be it the Haji Ali Shrine or the other temples in south of India.
We cannot compel apples and pineapples and exactly equate them to be same. Apples,
no, but it is about the right. It is about the rights of individuals.
Yeah, definitely, yes. Rights of individuals should be socially compatible too. Rights of individual definitely carry a huge weight, but social consciousness also have a play. There should be a balance between individual rights and social collectivity. And what's happening in Europe is they are trying to get to a new balance. And I proudly believe, many of my Muslim sisters who are very close to me, they wear a kind of burqa, they wear a kind of parda, not the fully face veil, fully covered veil. So we should try to strike some kind of a balance in this issue. Okay. And our Muslim should understand that there is a sensitivity on the other side. That is why even France went to the extent of banning burkinis.
Right,
saying,
right.
Burkinis are more closer to France than burkinis.
Absolutely. So you're saying there should be some sort of balance. Mr. Böhmer is back on link with us on Skype. Mr. Böhmer, the New York Times declared Angela Merkel as the liberal West's last defender. Another, editorial said that she's the last best hope for European liberalism. Now, this is a surprise statement then coming in from her. What do you attribute it to?
Well, I think it's actually a more or less symbolic concession to the right wing of her party. That's the way it's been seen here. The hot topic in Germany as far as migration is concerned is not actually the burqa or the veil, but it's rather, should there be a maximum limit for the number of refugees? That's what the right wing has been pressing her to introduce. She's refused that, and she continues to refuse that in exchange for not giving in on the maximum limit. She has given in on that matter of the burqa or the veil. Remember that among the migrants living in Germany, there are actually very few who do wear a burqa or a niqab. It was actually hard to find more than 2 or 3 who would be hit by that introduction of that law. And also, the way it was formulated in the party conference was that it would be banned in public spaces wherever possible, which indicates that even a Merkel-led government would not be ready to bend rules and regulations too far in order to introduce such a rule. Right.
So, Mr. Böhmer, are you saying that this is more of like an election time campaign pitch from Angela Merkel, and she wants to counterweight her refugee policy by saying that, all right, we let the refugees come in, but it seems that now she's saying it was only a one-time deal, letting so many refugees into the country?
Yes, absolutely. She knows there's a lot of criticism. She is not ready to change her policy on refugees fundamentally, which means that she continues to be, she continues to want to keep Germany open for as many refugees as crisis times might bring. But she also knows that the neighboring countries who are actually on the outer borders of the European Union have closed their borders. So she knows there will not be many more refugees coming in the future. So what the deal she's trying to do is not giving in on the principles of policy, but make a concession on a cultural field, because she knows that there is a lot of criticism. And as you might know, the right-wing parties, the Alternative for Germany, which draws on the Islamophobia that has built in the past few months, has risen to dimensions of plus 10% and could be a shaping feature of the next elections. And she wants to pull voters away from there with such a move of banning the burqa.
All right, Mr. Biomer and Mr. Eastward, I'd like you both to please stay on with me. Let's take a quick look at what's the status of the veil ban or the burqa ban in some of the countries in Europe. For instance, the Netherlands, members of parliaments there have voted to ban the burqa on public transport and in places such as government buildings, schools and hospitals. The Dutch cabinet, in fact, approved plans to ban the full-face Islamic veil last year, but the legislation still needs to be approved there in the Senate. That is the situation in the Netherlands at this point in time. We have a graphic played for our viewers. Moving on to France now, where it was the first country in Europe to ban face veils such as the burqa and niqab in public places. The controversial ban took effect in April of 2011 and made it illegal for Muslim women to leave their homes with their faces covered. Over in Belgium, this was the second European country after France there to introduce a ban on full-face veils that outlawed the burqa and niqab in public areas. The ban came into effect in July the very same year. Over in Switzerland, a majority of the electorate in the Swiss region of Ticino voted in favor of a ban on the face veils in public areas in 2013. The ban, though, came into force only this year. So, Mr. Eastward, coming back to you, how do you see, you mentioned, if you remember those iconic pictures of a woman at a beach in France, they went viral, of course, unverified pictures over there. But how do you read these developments that are taking place across Europe? And what do you think is a solution? I know you were talking about taking a middle path there. If you can enlighten our viewers on what you mean.
2 points, ma'am, with all great respect. I'm not saying this because I'm an Indian. I'm saying this because I'm a human. India is the right place and right position to God say the world that there can be a balance. We have the most society in the world, the pluralistic society in the world. We have all the religions, all the races. Angela Merkel is a great lady from Europe. Nobody is denying that. But even she went to the extent of saying the era of multiculturalism is over. India can still instill the confidence in people's mind, the globe's mind, that multiculturalism can thrive. I'm not saying about political correctness, but rather a genuine multicultural society where people of different cultures can coexist in great harmony and friendship. And there are examples from India. I'm not saying India is perfect, but India can put forward that example because India is very multicultural and pluralistic. The second point, we have to address these issues very genuinely. Many a times when you say right wing, that itself means they are something bad or their demands are something are not genuine or disproportionate. But right wings are raising some genuine concern about changing demographics.
All right. Mr. Eastward, there seems to be some issue with your Skype link over there. We'll try and rectify that in just a bit. But Mr. Biomer, how do you see this, phenomenon that's taking place in all of Europe? Do you think it's part of a disturbing trend of intolerance, xenophobia, and racism as well?
I think that definitely is an issue here. I think if you look at the forces behind it, and if you look at the people who are prone to this disturbing trend, it's those not only among the poor but also among the middle classes who are in fear and of a well-founded fear that in the economic changes brought about by globalizations, they might be disadvantaged. So I think what takes shape in this Islamophobia and xenophobia that we're witnessing on the rise in Germany and in other European countries is a genuine fear of a changing world and world outside of Europe becoming stronger and more powerful force. And then, of course, there are the security issues. Remember that we are the neighboring region to the Middle East. And I think, in particularly in Germany, many people thought that foreign policy, that security policy is not an issue that determines their everyday life when they were still living in the cozy world of the 1970s and 80s, when our countries had the luxury of dictating their terms of economics to others. Now we suddenly feel that we live in a globalized, interconnected world and that the problems in the neighboring Middle East reach us, be it in the form of migrants or be it in the form of terrorism. And that's very hard to come to terms with for many Europeans, that their world is changing.
Absolutely. So this ban that we're seeing, or this attempt to put a ban on the full-faced veil across Europe, it's very, very closely linked to the migrant situation that we're seeing, and that is something which cannot be refuted, Mr. Biomer. shed some more light on, why do you think these two issues are so closely linked, not just for Germany, but for other countries in Europe which have this issue of migrants coming in because of the situation in their countries at this point?
No, I actually think that my fellow interlocutor, who's just unfortunately broken off, has made a good point about the multicultural society and the multicultural tradition of India that we don't have here. The mindset of Europeans for the past 200 years was featured by the idea of the nation state, that a society can only be happy if the ethnicity, the language, and the political organization are all the same, shaped by one culture alone. And that model is breaking off. And that's fearful for many people. And as I said, the economic backdrop of that, for us, is not positive. Many people today, even in the middle classes, compare their chances that their children have to a good livelihood in the future, and they see that by comparison it seems worse than before, and many attribute that to the changes that take place in the world. So what we in Europe now need to do is find new rules that can govern a society across cultures. Some people have more experience in that. Some countries have more experience in that, such as the UK, such as France, but they face equally big problems. If you look at France, the situation there keeps deteriorating. We have a segregation of society that has helped build a very real potential of fundamentalism that threatens the interior security there.
Right.
So experience doesn't always help.
Experience doesn't always help. Mr. Easwar, coming back to you, you mentioned India in the context of this debate that we're having this evening. But the fact remains that India is not perfect, and you said it yourself. There are issues of intolerance, of racism, of castes, of cultures, but that all comes, I understand, with us being, with India being a multicultural society with so many different religions and cultures, people living here together. But you cannot say that in that sense India is not battling these issues, or we have been successful in taking care of these issues. So in that sense, it's a common problem that perhaps Europe and India both face at some level, not just talking about the face veil ban, but in a larger context.
I totally agree with you, and thank you for the kind words by my fellow panelists from Germany. Especially, we share a great bond with the ancient German people. And two things. One, India and especially Gandhian state, even though I'm a right-winger, both across left or right, respect a person like Gandhi. A person like Martin Luther King to Barack Hussein Obama tells Gandhi can be a role model, because Gandhi is a belief that centrism is possible. Many a times people feel when a person is a centrist that he is a fence-sitter. Centrism doesn't mean you are a fence-sitter. Centrism means a person who is actively moderate. He can build bridges. He can balance and blend differing ideologies. He can create a meaningful middle ground for people to exist. And right now, there is a huge demographic change that's happening in Europe that's undeniable. There is a huge cultural change. Globalization is bringing in new culture, new thought process. The old identities are melting. So the world itself is become some kind of a melting pot. And we need genuine middle ground centrist people to take leadership with, accepting the right demands of both left and right.
Mr. Easwar.
And create middle grounds.
Very valid points that both of my guests made here on the show this evening. But I'm going to conclude taking a line from what Mr. Böhmer said just a short while ago, that Europe today, there's a need to find new rules to govern the society across all cultures. And perhaps that is the way forward. On that note, I thank you both, Mr. Böhmer and Mr. Rahul Easwar, for joining me on this discussion tonight. We're taking a short break. Lots more news coming up right ahead. Stay with us.